Immediately, she stopped crying. She looked at me wide-eyed. She said, "This is your job? This is you know, you haven't done your job. Do your job." She stuck her finger in my face saying, "Do your job." And then she said, "When will you do your job?"
Accountability.
Yes, when will you do your job? And I said, "I better do it by 2026, otherwise we're all in big trouble."
Hello and welcome to North Star, the world's most interesting podcast on all things plant-based. In this series, we feature thought leaders, change makers, activists, entrepreneurs, and so many interesting people. So make sure you subscribe to the series and don't miss even one episode. In this episode, you will meet a grandfather who has promised his granddaughter that the world would predominantly turn vegan when she turns 16, that is by 2026, so that people stop eating her relatives. Dr. Sailesh Rao left behind a very successful 20-year-old career in technology to raise awareness about the environment and make this world a better place. He's the founder of Climate Healers, a non-profit that solely focuses on solving the hardest environmental crisis of today. Sir has been the author of 4 books and has been the executive producer of several popular documentaries such as Cowspiracy, What the Health, and The Land of Ahimsa. Dr. Rao has received multiple awards and recognition for his work towards a sustainable future, including being designated as a climate hero by the Guardian newspaper in 2023. So, thank you so much for being here with us. So honored to have you here with us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Honestly, we were lucky. He was just traveling and, he happened to be in India. So we're just excited that we happened to be at the right time in the right place.
Right.
But this was meant to be. We've been following your work for many years now. And the kind of impact that, you've had at a larger scale, it's truly shifted the world's view on eating or sustainably, being conscious. So, did you ever anticipate when you started out in the beginning that something like this would happen?
Well, I knew it was going to happen, but it was all of us putting our efforts together to make it happen. It's not just one person. Yeah, it's to me, it's inevitable that the world is going to be vegan by 2026. To me, it's in my mind, it's already vegan by 2026.
How do you see that happen? Can you break it down for us?
So the way, I look at it as an engineering project. In any engineering project, you have to believe that you're going to complete it successfully. Otherwise, you don't even start, right?
The goal has to be a bit more ambitious.
Well, I look at, first of all, in engineering, you look at feasibility.
Right.
Is it possible? Is it feasible that the world will be vegan by 2026? And I say, yes. All you have to do is to eat dal chawal, roti sabji, and idli sambar. How hard is that for people to do? Right? It's not that hard.
Every day.
I know, we do that every day. Right? So it's easy for us to eat the right way and spare the animals so that they survive and create a planet that's thriving for all of us. So to me, it's logical, right, that this is going to happen. Because it doesn't make any sense that we will continue eating the wrong way and destroy the entire planet and fall off a cliff. Why would we do that? Doesn't make any sense, right? So I know it's feasible. Once you know it's feasible, then you step back and say, how do you do it?
Right.
Okay. So that's how engineering always works. I look at it when I start a project, I always look at, is it feasible to complete this project? Is it actually possible to do this? And once you say it's possible to do this, you say, how do you do it? And then what are the steps to get there?
That's very interesting. To think about it, a lot of people argue that it's impossible to go vegan. It's very tough. It's not practical. Well, let me just isolate India in itself. Won't at the moment talk about rest of the world.
Right.
But in India, predominantly we eat vegan almost 90%.
Right.
3 times a day. So, and yes, now the frequency of meat eaters might have increased, but our traditional Indian diets, if it's we have options. So is that something which you feel that like a lot of arguments, rephrase this, a lot of arguments against, having the dependency on meat, especially livelihoods being dependent on that.
Right.
How would we counter something like that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a system. So I look at everything as a system. I'm a systems engineer, by the way, by profession. So I look at it as a system and say, in this system, you have sort of said the only way to get people to eat is to work for someone.
Yeah.
Okay. Otherwise, you don't get to eat.
Right.
Right. So that's how you force people to do things they don't want to do.
Right.
So that's called colonialism.
Right.
So we're still colonized. And we're still colonized by the West. Okay, because what is the food we're eating now? It's more and more what the West wants us to eat.
Global culture.
It's a global culture. And it's a McDonald's culture. It's a burger culture. It's a Pizza Hut culture. Yeah. Right? That's what's colonizing the whole world. Mm-hmm. Now, if it was the other way around, if we were getting Americans to eat idli sambar and roti sabji, right? Then India is doing that, right? India is spreading her values to the rest of the world. Right. And that's really what is needed now, not the other way around. We shouldn't be taking in American values and putting it and killing ourselves off. Instead, we should be promoting our values. What are our values? Basically, kindness to all life, ahimsa, yoga, and the food that comes with that, right? And when you do that, the whole world will thrive.
In fact, it's beautiful because we're one of the oldest cultures in the world.
So we should then spread that, right?
And whenever somebody comes to India and we offer them idli dosa, especially any of our guests, they just get hooked on to dosa immediately. Right. So it is the receptivity is quite high,
right?
But it's also somewhere the way maybe we all need to rethink our positioning. Is it something that in India we should spread and talk about plant-based foods and plant-based living,
right?
Where we are apologetic about it and position is more as a booming industry rather than saying we're going back to our roots.
It is the future as well, but it is something that we can learn from the past. So if you look at the students in Cambridge University, now they're asking for all cafes and canteens to be vegan, right? So vegan is the future. Why? Because when we all go vegan, planet thrives and we thrive with it. So it is the right fuel for our bodies as well. We know that too. There is really no argument against it anymore. No scientific argument against it anymore. Okay. So knowing that is just a matter of overcoming habits.
Right.
Right. And to me, that's a group issue. It's a community issue. Then you have to overcome habits. If a community gets together and says, let's help each other overcome our habits, it happens. Right. So it's up to us to make up our minds. Do you want to thrive in the future or do you want to just die off? Right? I mean, to me, there is no question which way we are going to go. Okay. Not just for our generation, not, I mean, I look at my granddaughter's generation and I say, what kind of future am I leaving for her? And what is our responsibility as a generation, my generation, towards that generation, towards your generation, right? We have a responsibility to leave a planet that's thriving, okay? Because our ancestors gave us a planet that was thriving, okay? And we are the first generation that realized that we're changing the climate of the planet, okay? So when we realize that we have that immense power to actually change the climate of the planet, it comes with responsibilities. I say it's like you've been given a steering wheel and said you can turn the steering wheel towards heat the climate or heal the climate. And each one of us has been given that steering wheel. Steering wheels always come with responsibilities. You can't say, I'll drive whichever way I want, the heck with everybody else. And then there's anarchy, right? So we know that. So, and that's what we now have to step up and take on the responsibility of a climate harmonizing species. So that's who we are. As soon as we admit that we're changing the climate, we became a climate harmonizing species. So we are responsible for the climate of the planet. And all the other animals are our bosses. They're not there to serve us, we are here to serve them.
Earth could be wiped off just in a jiffy. Major earthquake. But like a lot of species will survive. Probably humans will be the first, but
No, I mean,
we are indispensable.
No, I mean we are a part of the ecosystem, and I want my granddaughter to thrive. I want you to thrive. I want all my children to thrive. So we have a part in this, and that's the beauty of what climate change has brought us. Okay, until now we thought we were here to just enjoy ourselves and have fun, right? Now suddenly climate change is saying, okay, enough fun. You have some work to do,
Yeah.
right?
The balance was missed.
Right. Now we have the balance. Right. We're being shown that you have a role to play in the ecosystems of the planet. And we have to just accept that role. Because we cannot expect the tiger to go solve climate change.
It's also that as an intelligent species, you have the discretion to be intelligent or to misuse that intelligence.
Right.
From being a successful engineer to a full-time climate activist, rather a climate hero, how did this shift happen?
Oh, when I was working on the internet in the beginning, it was all a collegial group of people coming together and figuring out how to solve problems. Because there was not much money in the internet. It was just a technology that the DoD had given to us and said, do something with it for civilian use. So we were basically idealists. We were trying to connect the whole world. We wanted to make everyone's life better.
This is in which year?
This was in 1993 to 1996 is when my company got acquired. And then I saw there was politics now, right? Because it became bigger and bigger. My company got acquired, and then my company that acquired me got acquired by Intel in 1999 for $2.2 billion. And that was the largest acquisition that Intel had ever made at that time. And by 2003, the internet had taken off. And there was a lot of money involved. As soon as a lot of money gets involved, there's a lot of politics that gets involved, right? People are saying, I want my ideas in the next standard. And there was, it was so messy, and I was getting disillusioned with the whole process. Okay. I was saying, I'm not enjoying it anymore. And I was working on making it go 10 times faster.
But at that time when you were creating this massive mammoth like the network, weren't you like viewing this is something huge and it will transform the world?
Yeah. I mean, see, I knew it was huge, and I knew that when Intel acquired us, it's going to become huge once we deliver.
For our viewers, just tell us a little bit about what did your company do?
So we were connecting a computer to a switch or a switch to a switch at 1 gigabit per second. And until then, the fastest speed was 100 megabit per second. Okay, and the 100 megabit per second standard was very analog. It was an analog standard. And it had trouble working even at 100 megabit per second. So we converted it from analog to digital. Again, and we cranked it up by a factor of 10. So when I made the first proposal that we can do this, people laughed at me. Said, you're crazy, man. We can't even get 100 to work, and you're talking about doing 1,000. So, but they let me play. Said, okay, if you can convince enough people that it can be done and you can deliver, you have a standard. So that's how it started, right? It was a shot in the dark. And once we got it working, everyone became a believer in this digital technology. And then someone had come and said, we can do 10 gigabit using the same digital technology. And everyone was saying, yes, we can do 10 gigabit. And I was the only one saying, hey, hold on a second. It's not that hard. It's not that easy. It's not a crank that you just, there are physical limits you're going to hit. So I was getting more and more disillusioned with the process. Okay. So it was sort of the right time for me to see Al Gore's presentation on TV. That happened in December of 2005. I saw his presentation on TV and I was so shocked. I told my wife, if half of what he's saying is true, I'm wasting my time working on 10 gigabit Ethernet. And she said, if you think it's that important, why don't you look into it? Okay, so she's such a supportive partner I have in my life, And so she said, okay, go study it. And I did. And within 3 months, I told her, we have to close our company and focus on this full time.
Oh,
It was that, I mean, it is that much worse than what Al Gore was saying. In fact, by 2009, I was one of the most depressed environmentalists on the planet. I thought we were going to hell in a handbasket, that there is nothing I can do to stop it. Okay. And we are just, human beings just live and the planet dies. If we take human beings out, the planet thrives. So that was the story I was telling myself. I was saying, we are the only species that's a mistake. The nature made a mistake with us. Okay. And that was when my granddaughter was born. So she was born in 2010, and she is half Indian and 1/4 African American and 1/4 American Indian. So when I held her in my arms for the first time, I had a feeling like I was holding humanity in my arms. Okay. And she looked at me and she smiled, and she had this beautiful, glowing smile. And it was a knowing smile, as if she was telling me, what do you mean I don't belong? I belong exactly as I am. And you haven't understood me yet. So that turned my head around 180 degrees. And I said, I need to figure out a way in which, a story in which we belong exactly as we are. Because, I had seen an elephant in the sanctuary in the Western Ghats of India in 2009. And that elephant was breaking branches of trees, eating the leaves, throwing a branch away. They take another branch, eating the leaves, throwing the branch away. And I was telling the owner, isn't that elephant destroying a sanctuary? Shouldn't you stop that? And she said, no, 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 the elephant will stop on her own. Because wherever the elephant broke branches of trees, that's where the sunlight streams and nourishes the underbrush. Wherever the elephant trampled on bushes in the forest, that's where new pathways are formed. The elephant has no choice but to belong in nature.
it's like nature balances itself. When the lion is not hungry, they don't kill for plunder.
It's nature is the perfect system design. Okay, I'm a systems engineer and I'm in awe of nature as a system design. But I thought nature made one mistake. That was human beings. And she told me no. Kimaya said, no, nature didn't make a mistake. You haven't understood me. Just like you didn't understand the elephant, you haven't understood me yet. So go back and look at it and see how we belong exactly as we are. And I started looking at the scientific literature from that lens.
He saw a ray of hope.
It's a ray, it's actually faith. She brought me to faith than hope. Hope comes from a position of fear. And hope says, I think we're going to hell in a handbasket, but I'm hoping we won't, right? Whereas faith says, I know for sure we are not going to go down the tubes, because she brought that to me.
He saw, okay, there is, right. So tell us something about the Pinky Promise. How does this come into being?
Well, I'm a systems engineer, so I look at leading indicators to see how fast we need to transform. And the leading indicator in the environmental crisis is the loss of biodiversity, how fast we're losing them. And the World Wildlife Fund has a Living Planet report that comes out every 2 years. And they compile, about 3,000 odd species. They do a statistical survey. And they estimate how many of them have we lost in terms of total weight. And they said that between 1970 and 2010, we wiped out 52% of wild animals.
Wow, 52%.
Between 1970 and 2010. And that report came out in 2014. So when that came out, I did an extrapolation. Said, if we keep doing this, and I assume that we are killing wild animals proportional to the size of our economy. So if we keep doing this, how many more years can we do this before we wipe them all out? And the answer was 2026. And I was shocked at that calculation. Then I thought, I'm doing a very simple-minded calculation based on just economic growth. I want to wait for the next report to see what happens. So 2016, the report came out saying that between 1970 and 2012, 58% of wild animals died off. So we lost another 6% in 2 years.
This is not because of animal agriculture? Or
all of it. It's all of it put together. Animal agriculture is the primary reason for it. But so is mining and timber and all these other things. So you can look at how we are using land and why we are encroaching on wild animals. And so when that report came out in 2016, on that day, I was actually supposed to put my granddaughter to bed. So that's usually my job. Usually I read a story to her and then she sleeps. So this time I was reading a story by Ruby Roth saying that's why we don't eat animals. Eh? And at the end of the story, she put her head on my shoulders and she said, Grandpa, who were the first human beings? Now that's a very profound question. And I made a promise to my granddaughter that I'll never ever lie to her. So I made 3 promises to her actually. One is that she's the most amazing thing that ever happened to me, and that will never change. And the second is that I'll always love her no matter what she does. And the third is that I'll never ever like her, always tell her the truth. And she knew that. Okay, so I was going to explain to her how evolution works. So I said, imagine that you're standing on the street and you're holding your mother by your hand. And you ask your mother to bring her mother to stand by her side, and so on. You create a long line of mothers on this side of the street. Then on the other side of the street, you ask a chimpanzee to do the same thing with her mother, her grandmother, and so on. By the time these 2 lines go from Phoenix to Tucson, they will merge because both lines are going to say, hey, that's my mama too. Immediately, she just sat up in bed. She said, what? Are you telling me that animals are my family? And I said, yeah, now that you put it that way, they are your family. Because, I had not put it together like that. I only knew the theory of evolution. She immediately associated that with Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Okay?
Wow.
And it became visceral for her. And she said, if animals are my family, then why are people eating my family? Grandpa, make them stop. They're eating my family. And she started naming names of people she knows for eating her family. And there's the word always. So she started naming names of people she knows who were eating her family. And I realized I had created a world full of monsters for my granddaughter by trying to tell her the truth. And I was trying to console her. And I was trying to say, Kimaya, please stop because this is what I do. It's my job to make them stop. Immediately, she stopped crying. She looked at me wide-eyed. She said, this is your job? This is you haven't done your job. Do your job. She stuck her finger in my face saying, do your job. And then she said, when will you do your job?
Accountability.
Yes, when will you do your job? And I said, I better do it by 2026, otherwise we're all in big trouble. She said, will you promise me that? And I said, yeah, I'll promise you that. She said, will you give me a pinky promise? And I had no idea what a pinky promise meant. Yes, I said, okay, I'll give you a pinky promise. She said, hold out your pinky. She locked her pinky in mine and she said, you can never, ever break a pinky promise. And then she put her head on my shoulders again and went to sleep. And I could not sleep because I realized I had made a very serious promise to a little girl and I better figure out how to keep it. And at first I thought, who am I to make this promise? I'm just an engineer working on this problem, and I am making a promise on behalf of my entire generation. But then the next morning when I woke up, I realized that this is an engineering project. Climate healing is an engineering project. There just happens to be 8 billion engineers working on this project. Okay. And in any engineering project, the first thing you do is to ask a systems engineer how to do it. Yeah. And that's my job. So she really picked the right person and said, do your job. Right? So I had to own up to my responsibility to understand how to do it. And that started me on this whole research project, on how do you do it. So that helped me understand, that I analyzed it. I know why we are heating the climate because we have the wrong axioms. So the axiom of consumerism, the axiom of supremacism that causes us to eat the climate.
And you speak about the balance between self-care and activism or spreading awareness.
Mm-hmm.
What are the tips that you would recommend to somebody to avoid complete burnout or, balance?
Oh, that's a good question. What I do is I go through a practice every day. So I do my sun salutations, and then I do a 5 minute plank. So I do a plank. I hold my plank for 5 minutes. But I mean, I started off with 30 seconds by day. So I just kept increasing by 5 seconds every other day, and it became 5 minutes. And then I meditate for half an hour. So to me, that grounds me before I start the day. So to me, meditation sort of puts you in touch with your watching child. So there's a story in this book called The Wishing Tree Story. And it's one of Kimaya's favorite stories. And in that story, which is the equivalent of the knowledge tree story in the Bible, this is a story from pre-Vedic time. And in that story, they talk about a watching child and a wishing child. And the wishing child is wishing for things, and it comes with the exact opposite, and it's miserable. So the more the child wishes, the more miserable the child is. And eventually, the watching child who's watching others from inside, from somewhere, says, I know why he's getting miserable. Okay, because he's wishing for himself. If you wish for the benefit of everyone else, you'll be happy. Okay, so it's about letting go of the fruits of your action and act for the benefit of everyone else. And don't do anything for yourself. And it turns out that selflessness is actually the highest form of selfishness. Because that selfless act actually makes you happy. And selfishness is about being happy.
Yeah.
So a selfish person just hasn't figured out that being selfless actually makes you happier.
Full contentment.
Right. So, and when you start working for the benefit of others, the energy just comes. So you don't have to think about it. It just flows through you.
So anybody working for somebody else or someone else,
with a larger purpose in mind, right? Like if you say, I want the world to be vegan by 2026, and that's my driving goal now, right? And I'm working for that purpose. Yes, nothing matters anymore. This is why I'm here. So I'm all in 100%. So, and when I work like that, I don't even get tired. Yeah.
Yeah.
So having these simple practices to start the day off, then having good sleep and eat good food, whole food, plant-based as much as possible, then your body takes care of itself.
Some people in their life journey, sometimes they don't know what is their purpose, right? What would be your recommendation to such people so that they feel more vegan?
Yeah, I'd say that first you have to know that you're part of a larger species that has a purpose now. Healing the climate is our purpose, and maintaining that climate at an acceptable state for all of life to thrive, that's our purpose. So now, with respect to the larger purpose, what is your purpose? Okay. So in any engineering project, that's how it happens. We have an overall objective. We want to get this to work, whatever it is. And then everyone comes and says, so what are the ways and what are the other things we need to do to make this work? And how can I contribute? What is my gift? And usually they find something that they're good at and they contribute. Okay. So each of us has a gift. Okay? And have faith that you're here because you have a gift. So I see nature as the perfect system design. And because it's a perfect system design, no one is a mistake. Everyone has a role to play.
Right. So what is your North Star?
My North Star is my granddaughter. She is my guiding light. And that little girl who sat up in bed and said, do your job, she drives me. Because I want to wipe the tears from her eyes. And I don't want any child to ever have to feel that again. And that drives me. Because I know that what she went through, every child goes through at some point. They realize that there's something wrong going on. I went through that as a child too. And I remember that only 40 years later, then I went through something similar.
Wow.
Yeah. And because of that, I see her as my North Star.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us. It was a true honor.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And I hope you will find your North Star after this episode. Make sure you check out the book, The Pinky Promise. It will surely inspire you, and as we are sure it will inspire millions of people. The link is in this comment section below. Make sure you check out the book, The Pinky Promise. The link is in the comment section below. I hope that helps you find your North Star. Until next time, please subscribe to our channel, share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. And if this video inspires you, please share it with your friends and family as well.